Hello, my friend. Welcome back. If you watched my last video, The Sweet Spot, you know we talked about that incredible feeling when your job and your true work intersect. When you're earning a living doing something that genuinely brings you satisfaction and purpose. Well, I have a fantastic real-world example for you. Just recently out here on the beach, I had the pleasure of meeting someone who is absolutely crushing it in their sweet spot. I bumped into Alec Zappone, a super inspiring 30-year-old who owns his own surf camp. What's truly amazing is that he started this business when he was just 23 years old. And get this, his very first class had only 4 kids in it. Fast forward to today, and his camp is consistently at maximum capacity with a whopping 40+ kids per class. Talk about turning passion into a thriving career. I was so intrigued by his story that I had to sit down and chat with him about his journey, how he built a surf camp, and what it's like living in that sweet spot where his love for surfing directly translates into his livelihood. So, get ready to be inspired and pick up some sage advice. Let's dive into the interview. Elevator pitch, tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, my name's Alec Zappone. I was born and raised in Florida. Born in the surf industry. Surfing's kind of part of my life, runs in my bloodline. Went to Flagler College here in St Augustine, was on the surf team there, grew up competing, had sponsors, traveled to surf, and fast forward now, I'm the owner of a surf school called the WSMS Surf Art Camp, where we teach a big summer camp with about 40 kids per week. We also have a private and group lesson program where we teach students how to stand up and ride for their first time, and as well as developing their more advanced skills of high performance surfing.
Before we get into anything else, I saw like a couple weeks ago on Instagram you had a post and the caption said, "This job will never get old." I'm just wondering if you can expound on that a little bit in terms of like what this job means for you and what it does for you as a human being.
Yeah. This job is everything for me, honestly. It's a clear projection of my life and my soul and my passions. So I'm a big surfer. I've been surfing my whole life. And one of the biggest things that caters towards the job not ever getting old is that during the summertime in Florida, the waves go flat. And as a surfer, it's hard to keep your motivation and your stoke, per se, up. And when I'm out there teaching kids how to surf, my stoke is doubled. My excitement and my motivation for surfing doubles or triples. And so as opposed to before I ran surf camp during the summer, I was always bummed and down in the dumps because I wasn't surfing. And so every year I call it the stoke refinement process for myself and my instructors. Being out there with the kids during the summertime when it's flat. For them, it's not flat. The waves are big and fun for them, right? And we get to feed off of that energy and that stoke. And so, not only does it, benefit me, but I also see it benefiting these kids deeply, giving them confidence, giving them a life skill that can take them across the world. And we get a ton of feedback from the parents saying like, this is amazing. My kid's confidence, my kid's respect level, my kid's awareness has gone up so much. And so we are fed with positivity all the way through, not just the surfing, but from the development and the progression of children's personalities, and who they are as a human in life. And I've been working on the beach every summer since I was 18, and so of course I have a draw towards the beach. At first I was a lifeguard, then it progressed into being a surf instructor and then owning my own surf camp. And there's just something about spending a lot of time in the ocean on the beach that I think is just so good for your soul. And we're really lucky to love what we do and for our office to be this, and so it doesn't get old. Even if I'm exhausted, I wake up at 5 a.m. every morning to get ready for camp, and I could be 3 hours of sleep, I could be so exhausted and sunburned, and I still jump out of bed as soon as my alarm clock hits because I'm just so excited to get back to the kids and get back in the water, which a lot of my friends and a lot of people that I know, they don't have that. And so I'm really lucky to have that.
Yeah, I would think that there'd be a lot of people who'd be super envious to have that as their job.
Yeah.
Every great idea has a beginning. What was the aha moment that led you to create Where Salt Meets Soul?
So there was a few aha moments of creating the WSMS Surf Art Camp. The biggest aha moment for me was when I was a lifeguard for St. Johns County Marine Rescue, teaching their junior instructor camp. I kind of had this aha moment of how you can change the world by teaching the younger generation something, valuable, a skill or a trait that can help themselves and help others. And so for the junior guard camp, we were teaching them how to identify and escape rip currents, how to rescue conscious and unconscious victims, how to do CPR, the process of, basic medical calls. And that was my first aha moment where I was like, wow, like if I want to have an impact on this world, I need to work with the youth and teach them valuable skills that can help themselves and help others. So that was that first big one. And I think the other one came when I was in school studying psychology, to where I, learned how we learn. I learned how our, personality develops, how our brain develops. And something along that, led me to play therapy, which, to me, the play therapy part was the aha moment in the psychology education to where it made so much sense to me. And I believed pretty quickly that was like the secret to success for all humans, whether it be kids or adults, to go out into nature and play and have fun and feel joy. And those were my two kind of aha moments.
Very cool. What about St. Augustine? What is it about this city that made you want this to be the place where you build your dream?
Yeah, man, that question's a big one because, like I was saying to you before, I was born and raised in this area, and I had this whole stigma or whatever you want to call it of like I can't live in my hometown forever. I need to go. And so I kid you not, I went out looking across the whole country for a better beach town than St. Augustine, and I did not find one. I came right back. This community is strong. This community has a huge heart. Most of the people here, they really look out for one another. They support one another, whether it be during hurricanes, helping each other fill sandbags and board up their house, and as well as just down on the beach with, the kindness of, you say good morning to someone, they look at you in the eye and say, good morning, how are you today? And it's genuine. Traveling across the country, I found that there's a scarcity of that. There's a scarcity of people that, acknowledge other human beings around them on a level of like appreciation, and so I felt that was where the environment I wanted to be in, where people were kind and cared about one another as opposed to just they care about their own life, stuck in the rat race. The rat race doesn't exist here. We're kind of on island time, Yeah.
Cool. So in starting your business that you have right now, is there like a milestone or a moment that was part of your entrepreneurial journey that you're particularly proud of, that really stands out to you? Like this was like a key moment that I feel really good about? Yeah.
So, I would say there's probably two things. The first one being just doing it, the anxiety, the fear of failure was overbearing. And like I said before, I didn't have enough money to start a business. And so I took out a credit card of, a couple $1,000, $3,000 of credit of money I did not have. And I went for it. I maxed that credit card out to buy my tents, my surfboards, my materials. And even though my first year I didn't pay that all off, I had other jobs and I worked to pay that off. That was the biggest thing for me, just doing it, following through with my beliefs. I knew it was going to be special. I knew it was special. And I knew it was just going to take time. And so trusting that feeling inside of me was probably that first real big milestone.
So pride and trusting yourself.
Exactly. Pride and trusting yourself and investing in yourself. I feel like a lot of people are scared to fail. And accepting that that's a part of the process was big for me. Yeah, it was big.
What's one of the biggest challenges you've had since you started your business?
I think one of the biggest challenges in starting my business was scaling up in size. So as we, kind of caught some traction in the community, and we, our attendance jumped from the 10s to the 20s, fielding and hiring instructors who shared the beliefs and the values that I did was probably the biggest challenge that I have endured through the growth of my business. And now I'm very experienced at that. I have really good markers and people to see, if they're going to be a good fit. But at first I was not so good at that. I didn't even understand necessarily how to do that. And so ultimately hiring and managing employees to help run my service in a way that I knew that, that instructor would take the kids and do and say the same things that I would. That was the hardest part. And so with that,
just to talk about your growth a little bit, like looking at pictures from when you first started off, like you've got a great picture with I think it's 4 kids,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Talk about going from 4 kids to where you are now, so people will appreciate when you talk about the growth, how big that growth has been for you.
So our first year when we launched, we had 10 weeks available, and we only had kids sign up for 4 weeks. And out of those 4 weeks, the biggest week was the week that you're talking about. We had 4 kids. And so that did feel like a failure at first, right? Because as these big shot ideas and goals, you're like, oh, I'm gonna be a success. I'm gonna be, I'm gonna have all these kids come. They're gonna love it. And so year 1, it was kind of a slap to the face of oh, this is gonna be, a process of building. Fast forward now, we're on year 7, and we've had 40 plus kids every single week. We're going on week 8, and we have 40 kids next week, and it's crazy because we actually sell out at 35. I only have 35 available spaces on my website, but because we've connected with so many kids and we've helped kids get to the level that they're surfing on their own, I allow kids at a higher level to come on top of the 35 kids. And so we went from 4 kids that first year is the biggest week. The second year, the biggest week was 8 or 10. Then the next summer it was 12 to 15, and then the next summer it was 18 to 20, and then we had a big jump. We went from 20s to almost 30s, right? 27 to 30, and then this past summer was also a big jump that thankfully I was prepared for. But we went from last year our biggest week was 37. This year our biggest week was 52, and since I do a 1-to-2 ratio, if I have 40 kids on the beach, I've got 20 instructors on the beach as well. So that's 60 people I'm managing. And when I first started the camp, I did not know how to do that, And so I think learning while we grew was a great thing because I was learning how to do it. But with that comes some failure, comes with owning up to your failure and acknowledging that, you did something wrong, not being embarrassed, facing it up, telling the parents this happened, that happened, and moving forward knowing that you're never going to do that again. So a big scale from 10x from 4 to 40 within the 6 years of growth.
So I mean, challenges with that obviously are many, right? Lots of things to deal with, but you've got strong roots here in St. Augustine. So when you think about from starting to where you are now, what is it about the community or your roots, or what have you leaned on in St. Augustine, the resources available to you? What have you tapped into here in the community?
It's a great question because I feel as though that is the secret. One of the secrets to our success in terms of instructors and counselors is that most of them are born-bred beach people. Born and bred, growing up on the beach, whether or not they were surfing at a high level or not, they were raised in our community. We have a couple instructors that are from out of town, but those instructors grew up coming to this town and they love this town. And so you nailed it on the head to where, most of my instructors, they harness the heart of our community. And so it's an extension of our community. Our camp is an extension of our community to where all of my instructors, whether they were born and raised here, they have that heart of they beat with the beat of our town. And so I leaned on that heavily with my instructors, but not only my instructors, my biggest goal was to have local kids as our students. I wanted more local kids than tourists because I wanted to see those kids at the grocery store. I wanted to be able to go to those kids' schools and do workshops and see the same kids and have them come up and say, hey, this is what we do, this is how we do it, which we do that. We go to schools and we set up, and I get to see all my little surf buddies. And then on top of that, I had this big idea and goal that it would be eventually a sustainable community within our camp to where the kids would come as campers, and then they would transition from campers to volunteers, and then from volunteers to instructors. And they live here, they've been doing it forever. And now that we're 7 years into it, this year, I have 5 kids who are transitioning into being an instructor, and they've been coming since they're 7, 8 years old. And so
that's real grassroots.
Yeah, it's real grassroots, to where they know the kids, and I have 2 twin girls that when they were, students that are now they're instructors this year, they're 14 now. When they're students at 8 years old, their mom was pregnant with their youngest brother, and now he's at my camp, and they're instructors to him.
That's crazy.
And it's so cool. And so, like, back to leaning on the community, that was a big thing for me.
Yeah,
big thing. Yeah.
Yeah, you had the advantage, obviously, of being from here. This is obviously a big tourist town.
Yeah.
So people, I think, know St. Augustine is like a touristy place, but like when you have a really tough day out here on the beach or a tough day at work, what would be a place, maybe not in St. Augustine, but either in or around St. Augustine, that you find is like a good decompression for you? Clearly, the beach is one of those things, but aside from the beach, like what's a place that makes you feel good, or that kind of is good for your energy? Yeah.
So because I'm at the beach all the time, it's interesting. It can't always be my escape, right? Because I'm always here. But there are, I want to say 5 to 6, state preserved lands in our area. The Matanzas State Forest, Moses Creek. There's Guana up in Volano, to where they have preserved big chunks, thousands of acres of land. And so that is where I find myself. One of my favorites is the Matanzas State Forest that I go. It's a retired pine wood farm, so it's a bunch of pine trees. And another one, I like to go down to Matanzas Inlet, which is, you can walk around the inlet and go to either side. Of course, there's a ton of people there. Because my biggest thing is I want to kind of get away from the crowd, because I'm always of service and talking, that when I need to decompress, I like to be in nature and not be around a ton of people. So I find myself going to these, trails in the woods in town, and I tell a lot of people about these areas, and a lot of them are like, whoa, I didn't know. They'll see a photo, they're like, where were you? Is that North Carolina? I'm like, no, that's 10 minutes away from here, man. That's Matanzas State Forest. Or Moses Creek Trail is a big one that I walk. You can walk all the way back and by the creek. You can fish at the end. Every year there's a bald eagle that nests right there without fail. It's its spot.
Yeah.
So I go a little inland, away from the beach actually, because we have the intercoastal. We're a barrier island, so we have water on that side as well. And so I like to go to that waterway, but walk through the woods to get to that waterway, and I see deer, raccoons, possums, bunny rabbits, snakes.
It sounds like you're grounded in nature for sure.
It is, yeah. And we have a lot of, places like that here that we can go, hang out in, which is awesome.
Yeah, this is
awesome.
A great place.
It is.
Without giving up your age, and if you want to give out your age, that's fine, but you've been doing this for 7 years, right?
Yeah.
So you're relatively young. If you were going to give advice to someone who started off as young as you were when you started, or even a younger version of yourself, like someone who wants to start their own business, start their own venture, what are a few key pieces of advice that you would either give to a younger version of yourself or someone like yourself? Yeah,
so when I started my business, I was 23, so I'm 30 now. The biggest piece of advice I would give to any younger entrepreneur, and I just met a kid the other day who's going after it. He's 17. I was so excited. I had multiple conversations. I'm texting with him now. But is to trust in yourself and invest in yourself without, unapologetically invest in yourself. People think it might be selfish. People, think it might not be the right call. You want to go work at a bank. You want to go do, a secure job. When you're young, you have nothing to lose, and that's something that people don't realize. You don't realize you have nothing to lose. Failure is not loss. Failure is not loss. Even if you lose a couple $1,000s, that is nothing in the grand scheme of things.
That's so true.
The biggest way I think we can have confidence in investing in ourselves, though, is by leaning on your expertise. Everybody has an expertise of some sort. Whether you're at the expert mode level or not, you have been doing something since you were a kid that you are more aware of, more developed in. And for me, it was surfing. For me, it was being a waterman, right? for somebody else, it might be playing the guitar or hiking. Like you know how, different plants, how to navigate with no compass, lean on that. Lean on the things you've been doing since you were a kid that is a part of who you are already. And that doesn't mean don't go find something else that makes you and develop an expertise in that. But I think that when I talk to younger generations, I say, okay, what have you been doing since you were a kid that you love, that you're good at? That's your starting point.
So something that was really big for me recently is doing some reading. And for me, like, unless I hear something, or when I do hear something, it provides like more clarity for me.
Yeah.
And a key distinction was, like, work is something that you do for satisfaction.
Right.
A job is a service you provide to earn money.
Yeah.
And those two things could be the same, or they could be mutually exclusive, right?
Yeah.
And I think everybody would like to find a place where your work is your job.
Right.
And it seems like you have found that.
Yeah.
But I've heard you talk a little bit about like a fork in the road for yourself, where finishing college, the corporate world calls. How did you know that the path you were gonna go down would be your work as your job?
Right.
And then how do you, if you had to give advice to somebody else about that same, like, making that decision, what sort of advice would you give them?
Right. So, I actually talked to a lot of my 17, 18-year-old instructors about this. That corporate job is going nowhere. It's still there. Even if you're 25 years old and your startup failed, it's still there. You can go back to it at any time, and that's why I say you have nothing to lose. But the thing that the fork in the road for me is that all of your family and friends, they care for you and they want you to succeed, right? And so they're going to encourage you to do something that they know will help you succeed. Most of my sphere of influence encouraged me to go get a real big boy job. Family, friends, a majority of people, encourage me to go get a job that I can make enough money and then start something. Once you got your job and you're safe and you're good, then go start something. And that I almost did, right? I went and explored that world, right? But thankfully for me, because I chose lifeguarding and chose passion as my first jobs all the way, I had just enough experience to know, like, no, this is possible to make your work and your job the same thing, and there's a way for it to align with your passion. And so I really think that just by really understanding that corporate job or those corporate jobs aren't going anywhere, that door's never gonna close. If you could be 30 years old, I could tomorrow say, like, hey, I want to go get a job at the bank or at wherever. It's still there. There's still job openings. You can still go and get that job. It's never going anywhere.
But this opportunity may.
Exactly.
Right? If you have this idea or this spark,
right,
and you want to follow that momentum,
yes,
like,
that might go away. Exactly.
Now's the time to ride it.
Now's the time to go for it and invest in yourself. Yeah, it really is.
It seems like you've been successful, right? Like, all your classes are full. You've got like momentum.
Yeah.
If you had to define success for not just your business, but success for you, how would you define it? What does that look like for you, and do you feel like you're there?
I do feel like I'm there. I tell all of my young instructors that I invest in my memory bank. That my memory bank is going to be where I'm a million or billionaire. My memories
That's great advice.
I cherish them. And I've listened to so many interviews of people, billionaires on their deathbed, people that are passing away, and the things that they think about are their memories. That's all you have. All you have at the end of your life are the memories, right? The money in the bank, that does nothing for you when you're about to pass away. And so for me, I like to be rich in memories, but that comes with stipulations. You still gotta feed yourself. You still gotta pay your rent, pay your phone bill, your insurance. And so how do you balance those two? And that is that big fork in the road of investing in yourself. But for me, what I always tell everyone is to think about their two banks as separate banks. Their memory bank and their actual Bank of America bank or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And try to be more rich in the memory bank than this bank.
That's such good advice.
And I think for me, that my memory bank being rich is what catered towards my actual money bank being bigger, because I had spunk, fire, passion, because I was traveling to surf. I was feeding my soul with energy, you know, that becomes infectious and contagious because I'm feeling so good, because I'm feeling rich. It doesn't matter if I'm actually rich, I'm feeling rich, and so I'm embodying rich, you know. And I think that's so important. And I have seen so many of my friends that tunnel visioned on that, you know, monetary bank, like the real money bank at first, and now they're trying to backtrack because they missed out on their 20s of feeding their memory bank. And now they're like, oh man, wait, but now they can't leave that job, because if they leave that job, then they get a bad referral, and so now they're only doing two to three. It's a vicious cycle. It's a vicious cycle, right? You're kind of trapped, right? And so it's that memory bank. You want to be rich in the memory bank. And Bob Marley has a great interview to where, you know, he talks about riches. And I urge everyone to go listen to that wherever you can find it, YouTube or whatnot, because that impacted me heavily when I was about 15, 16. I saw that, I'm like, whoa, I never thought of it like that. Like, what is riches?
Definitely even get that link from you.
Yeah, riches is life, not money, right? Yeah.
Totally. So, looking at the future, right, what challenges do you have over the next year? Like, if we were going to follow you every day, and there was something right now that's a challenge on the horizon for you, what is that, and how are you and your business going to be different if we came back and talked to you next year in relation to that challenge?
So I think the biggest challenge that we're seeing is that we're scaling past our accommodation ability, and so we're approaching that 50, you know, head count, and our beach real estate where we are can't accommodate more children, and so we are at a crucial point in our scaling and development as a business, of whether or not we invest in another location and expand so we can accommodate more children, right? To continue on and keep expanding, so we don't have to say, hey, you can't come. I have such a hard time telling kids I can't come. My surf director is always like, bro, you let 4 more in this week? Like, what are you doing? I was like, dude, I couldn't tell them. It was Daxon, it was Peter, it was the homies. I couldn't tell them no.
That's a terrible problem, right?
Right. And so I think the biggest thing that we're facing is you know, being able to accommodate the amount of kids that want to come. And one of the things that we're working on to help kind of accommodate is an online presence of digital courses. And so, you know, kids can take the courses at home, and they can do the same sort of experience without the ocean at home. So for some kids that maybe they can't come this summer or whatever it is, that's another outlet for them to take it that way. But I think we're at like a crucial point of really considering opening up another location, but we're very fearful of dilution of our experience, right? You know, if I take some of my best instructors over there and put them over here, that's part of my heart. My heart is moving over there now. So this heart would have to, you know, have some sort of refillment, It's
all the same challenges you've had, right, in your current growth, but now, like, it's like growing a whole new person and then putting them someplace else and trusting them with your vision, yeah?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
so that's the next biggest challenge.
I'm excited to talk to you next year then.
Yes.
There's going to be 2 of you sitting here.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. I would love to do that.
Yeah, I would definitely want to get a follow-up sometime. So. If anybody wanted to get in touch with you to either learn more about the school or talk to you about entrepreneurship or whatever it may be, like, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so through our camp website, WSMScamp.com, there is a talk request form down there where you put your email address, your phone number, and then you write me a message. And I'm very quick about responding on there. A lot of times I'll email first, and then we'll hop on a call together. I've had people ask about the camp, ask about surfing outside of the camp, that they want to do it on their own and they don't need an instructor and they just want some advice, which I don't have a paywall on my, you know, advice. Like, you can come to me and text me about, hey, take a look at this board. What do you think? And I will.
You're open to being a mentor.
Yes, I will gladly mentor anybody that is seeking advice, and you don't have to pay me for it, because that's, like, you know, that's my purpose. And I think that betters our surf community as a whole, to educate as opposed to put a paywall or to, you know, haze, like I was saying before. And so the camp number is my personal number still, and so I have that on me all the time. And so if you go on my camp website, that is my personal phone number, and so wherever I am, I'm there to pick up and talk. about anything, entrepreneurship, surfing, whatever.
Right on.
We consider ourselves kind of like surf therapists as well. So we actually do, myself and a couple of my instructors, we do a lot of like surf therapy discussions to help people overcome traumatic events. And so every so often I have someone reach out like, hey, I hurt my knee, my fin got me, I had to get 20 stitches, and I'm like real nervous to like go back out. Like, any advice to kind of like overcome this challenge of like, mental restriction to let me go out. And so I love walking people through how to overcome, roadblocks in surfing. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking time today, Alex.
Yeah,
I'm super impressed with everything that you've done. Like, you're obviously an impressive young man, but thanks for making time, and thanks for sharing your advice.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
Right on.
I want more people to know about it.
What an awesome story, right? Alec is not only an amazing human being, but a fantastic example of what's possible when you align your passions with your profession. Starting with just 4 munchkins and building it into a thriving business that's at full capacity, and now looking at ways to expand even more, that's the power of finding your sweet spot and putting in the hard work. His journey wasn't overnight, and he clearly faced and faces his share of challenges, but his dedication to something he clearly loves has paid off in a big way. It really drives home that concept of work being something that brings satisfaction to life. He's not just running a business, he's sharing his love for the ocean and surfing with the next generation. So what's your wave? What are you passionate about? What could be that thing that bridges the gap between your job and your true work? I hope this interview inspired you to think about that a little bit more. Let me know in the comments what you took away from Alec's story. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more stories of people living in their sweet spot, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And if you haven't seen my first video on the sweet spot, I'll link it below for you to check out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Keep chasing your wave, and as always, crush your ego, inflate yourself, follow your intuition, and find your everyday.